What is going on, Notre Dame fans? This is Mike Singer from blueandgold.com, and look who we have with us. Mike Goolsby, former Notre Dame linebacker and captain. Goolsby and I did the post-game shows after every Notre Dame game last season and had a lot of fun going live with him talking Notre Dame football. So the last show we had, Mike, with you on at Blue and Gold here was January 1st. Of course, when Notre Dame lost to Alabama. What in the world has Mike Goolsby been up to here recently?
Yeah, same old, same old. I apologize for the hiatus. I had a couple things. I went down to Tennessee to visit my folks for Christmas, Mike. We're there for an hour, and I somehow managed to tear my bicep on Christmas Eve. So that was the whole thing. So I had some surgery with that, and then shortly thereafter, I was having a throat issue. So I'd have something taken out of my throat. And it was funny. I went to two different ENTs, Mike, to get obviously a second opinion. And both of them, the first questions out of their mouths were, "Do you talk a lot for work?" And I was like, "Well, shoot, that's all I do is talk." So I just had to kind of let my voice rest and heal. And it's still a little bit gruff, but it's good to be back and getting incrementally better here. So good to see your bearded face, Mike.
I know I look the same. Maybe it's even just a little chunkier. I'm going keto here soon. Mike, do you have any experience with the keto
It
diet?
works. It absolutely works. Yeah, my girlfriend's done it numerous times, and yeah, I've got about a COVID 20 myself to lose here, buddy. So strength in numbers, but it absolutely does work. Yeah,
This will be my third
and,
time
and
on it.
mix in intermittent fasting. So
Yep.
like we ate dinner at 5:30, so I went like 17 hours without eating. And intermittent fasting is mixed in with the keto. You'll uh, be looking fantastic in no time.
All right. Well, we'll have a progression of my fat face down to my slim face. We'll be able to see the next few months, hopefully here.
Okay, looking
Um,
forward to that.
Yeah, so Mike, yeah, obviously I knew that you were out, but I just get so many comments on YouTube and podcasts like, "Where's Goolsby?" I'm like, the one thing he needs to do is just be able to talk, and he can't. So talk and
Sure.
see. You need to be able to see film. So no
Yeah,
games to
really had to
break.
pick my spots, but yeah, like we spoke on the phone yesterday. I have been trying to keep in the loop, pop in on the message board, and um, I've been keeping abreast of all things Notre Dame. So we got a lot to talk about.
Yes, we do. So no, football games to break down. Of course. Did you get to watch the spring game, Mike? What'd you think about the spring game? I'll ask you about that real quick.
You know what, I didn't get a chance to see it because I think
You
I was
were
actually camping. I was
camping.
traveling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it was okay.
it is what it is. I mean, we know what spring games are.
Yeah,
Um, it's nice to watch football, though, for sure.
yeah. So in today's show, we will be talking about 5 recent Notre Dame commitments. I was just going to do the 5 most recent ones, but then I decided to sneak in the quarterbacks. I was like, I got to get Mike to talk about the quarterback. People want to hear about Notre Dame in that quarterback position with just how important that is. So let's start with Notre Dame's most recent commitment. That was Holden Staes, 4-star tight end recruit down in my backyard of Atlanta, Georgia. So first, Mike, we will pop on his junior tape, which was, I believe it was only 6 games. So we'll pop on his tape, watch it, talk about it. So Mike, long dude. I mean, do you see the Tommy Tremble comparison? A lot of people say not only does he look like Tommy Tremble in like the face, but on film as well. What do you think?
Yeah, you're stealing a little bit of my thunder, Mike. Uh, yeah, the resemblance is obvious, and it's fun to make that comparison. I don't think at this point in his development or in his young career, he's as physical of a player as what we were fortunate enough to watch with Tremble. Um, but as far as like the football, he's a move guy, so he's a displaced tight end. So It's rare that we get to see him with his hand in the dirt, blocking in line, like from a traditional sense, which we will get to see more from Eli Raridon here shortly. Um, so, kind of as a football fan or sort of an analyst, if you will, I think generically speaking, Mike, like when you look at a tight end, you like to see that classic inline, hand in the ground blocking, somebody that's going to get their nose dirty. But then as I was watching Holden's film, the reality of it is, Mike, that blocking people off the ball and blocking people in space is oftentimes more difficult, especially like, taking on a linebacker than it is just blocking down on a defensive end whose eyes are inside. So let's not, I don't want the fact that you don't get to see Holden with his hand in the ground, it shouldn't be like an overt negative. It's kind of a wait and see thing. But yeah, he's a long, fluid athlete, catches the ball with his hands, has the height, weight, measurables. The biggest thing to me that stands out about Holden is his ability to high point the ball. And in that regard, Mike, he really looks like a receiver, frankly. But yeah, just how fortunate to, Notre Dame comes in and offers these a handful of tight ends every year. And like, what a blessing, it's like a coin flip, whether you're going to the league or not. So, early indications, again, height, weight, just watching the kid, the fluidity. And yeah, I know you're a Colin Cowherd fan, Mike.
You are correct.
So, and you've heard Colin talk about this multiple times going back a decade ago, how draft rooms and teams and GMs and scouts, like they look at kids and they'll say, in particular, Colin references this with quarterbacks, but the kid has a good face. The prospect has good face. Holden looks the part, like he just looks like a stud. He's one of those types of kids. But yeah, good get for the Irish. Just looks like it's another kid that's next in line in terms of that tight end lineage. Exciting player.
So folks watching on folks listening on podcasts, obviously you're just hearing, but YouTube folks, we have film up, and this is workout footage that I took seeing Holden earlier this spring. Anything stand out here, Mike, that maybe you didn't see on film and kind of see in these clips? Anything that might give you any other extra data on him?
Yeah, we've talked about this before in terms of like evaluating a kid, like short area quickness, which we've sort of broken down. And then there's kind of long speed. To me, he's more of a long speed kind of strider type than he is more sudden. So like, watching this, he's got to learn to drop his weight a little bit more. But yeah, he's just an athlete. You know what I mean? And that's kind of Notre Dame's trend is and I mean, that's what's in vogue in general, is just to get long, athletic kids and then slot them in where they fit best. And that's what this kid is. But yeah, it just kind of looks relaxed. It's just, yeah, like I said, looks the part, kind of has the confidence. It's kind of a no-brainer. You're offering the kid, and he's fortunate enough to get an offer from a Notre Dame playing the position he does.
Speaking of long,
I think here we go. This is the fun thing to kind of compare and contrast these two. So, but yeah, you got a little bit of a lead in here, Mike.
Yeah, Eli Raridon. This is a guy that personally, and you go way back with Eli specifically. Even, why don't you tell us your connection with the Raridons?
Yeah, so this is crazy. So his father Scott was obviously a teammate, or maybe not so obviously. He was a teammate of mine at Notre Dame. He was a couple years behind me, offensive lineman, big dude, obviously. Scott and I were fairly close. I mean, his dorm room in St. Edward's Hall was 2 doors down from me. And yeah, so fast forward, and Scott's, he's a neighbor currently. He lives in Iowa. I'm here in Nebraska. Last summer, I was at a local showcase event here in Omaha, the Warren Academy Showcase. I had a couple kids that I brought there, and Scott was there. And then Eli was there. He was there, obviously, with his son, Eli. And he's like, yeah, you remember when because Scott had a baby in college with his high school girlfriend, now wife. And that baby turned out to be Eli. I was
How
like,
old did you feel?
let's not get into it. But very. I was like, man, time really does fly, Mike. So I meet Eli, and honest to God, like I'm not short. I'm a tall 6'3". I'm looking up at Eli, and the first thing that crossed my mind was he looked like Ivan Drago from Rocky. He looked like Drago, like the Russian. He's a big kid. Um, and I've got a lot of notes here, but like for any of you, the viewers or listeners, subscribers, if you've ever met like a pro athlete in real life, and I used to be a pro athlete, I guess, had a couple cups of coffee in the NFL. Those dudes aren't like overly muscular. Like Rob Gronkowski is a massive human being, but he's not overly muscular. I met Brian Urlacher when I was in college. And again, huge frame, not overly bulky. And like Eli is a massive dude, massive. If he's listed at 6'6", he might be 6'7". Huge hands, long, plays high level AAU ball. Competitive kid. I'm surprised he's not rated higher than a 3-star. But now we get into the comparison of contrasting him with Holden. Holden might be if they ran a 100-yard dash, Holden might beat him in a 100-yard dash. But in a 25-yard, 30-yard sprint, Eli might win. Like Eli's got a little bit more short area quickness to me than Holden has, like better long speed. Eli doesn't quite high point the ball quite as much as Holden does, where he goes up and gets it. But I think when people envision classic or traditional tight end, Eli probably slots more into that, hand in the ground, and Holden's more of your move guy. You could split out into a slot and create mismatches. So it's a really, really fun combination that Notre Dame's manages to scoop up here, Mike.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that about Eli, because when we watch those clips of Holden, you see he's got a big chest, big broad dude, whereas Eli, and I've met Eli in person as well, both of these guys, actually within like 4 days of each other. I saw Holden, and then when I was in South Bend not too long ago, Eli stopped by our office when he was on his self-guided tour, and I was also like looking up, I'm 6'2.5", about, bigger than I would like to be, and I felt really small, next to Eli Raridon, this 16, 17-year-old dude. And, of course, Scott is massive as well, his dad. But, when you think about which guys to flex, you would think maybe the one who looks more like a receiver, which my untrained eye would say Eli, and then the guy with his hand in the dirt would be the bigger guy, who right now it's at least Holden. But you think it's you think it's flipped? Like, tell us why. Like, if Tommy Rees is throwing out those two guys in a 12 personnel, where would you have them? Tell me about that.
Well, like we the formations that we see in the last season, whereas you have a Y, Mike, and you have a U in terms of your tight end. So your Y is the guy with his hand in the ground, and the U is the move guy. So like, if there was the formation, the strength was to the left. Eli's going to have his hand in the ground, and then Holden maybe in a 2-point stance, almost in a wing formation off of his hip. That's how I see it.
Okay.
But like, why do I see that? I wrote pop, so POP pop, where Eli's making contact with people, and it's like small bombs go off. Like almost when you watch Prince Collie play linebacker last year, when he hits people, it's like small little explosions. Where Eli has that, where like he runs into somebody and they go the other direction. So like the comp for me, when I saw that Eli committed, and I remember the first time I met Kyle Rudolph, I was like, that is a big son of a gun. Not like crazy athletic, not going to run like 4.4s or anything like that. But Rudolph is the comp for Eli to me, and this is all very early, but it's fun, right?
Yeah.
Fun. And then Tremble to me would be the comp for Holden, just in terms of like the way they move around, like the fluidity, the long speed. I'm really excited to see what Tommy Tremble does in the NFL, because he was, wasn't really utilized in the passing game, and he is a tremendous athlete. Ran a great 40 time. So, yeah, this will be really fun to watch these two compete and play alongside one another into the future here.
Yeah,
you can just tell he's a big physical dude, and obviously, the lineage goes back with Scott's father, but I believe like Scott's uncle played big time college ball, and I think even Grandpa played big time college ball. So, I mean, this is what you get.
Yeah. Grandpa was on Lou Holt's staff, strength and conditioning coach.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Tremble's lack of usage, I think, can be a lot attributed to, of course, Michael Mayer's emergence. But yeah, so I mean, John McNulty got to be pretty pleased right now, huh? I mean, you think tight end you kind of continuing the tradition here, especially after getting last year Kane Barong, Under Armour All American, Mitchell Evans. Mike was like one of the biggest surprises of spring. He's
Big
not a
Mitch.
tackle. Like Big Mitch is not a tackle. Like dude looked really good. And
Well,
then in
yeah, when Mitch, I
2020, of
think
course, Marin Bauman.
when Mitch cleans up his body, right, trims off some of that baby fat. I mean, shoot, we've all been there. I mean, you're back there, Mike, with the baby fat. But uh, yeah, I mean, Notre Dame's tight end lineage it's really, really something. And yeah, I don't see any signs of us falling off. One other thing that I did have with Eli, a note that I wrote down. Um, and again, this can play back into the comparison with Holden, but like I think like athleticism and time, speed, and all that stuff, it's sexy, right? It really grabs people. But again, we talk about the physical stature of people, and Rob Gronkowski's made a Hall of Fame career doing this. I don't know how many people he's going to beat in a foot race, but he's such a big human being. It's hard to defend a guy like that. Frankly, it is. I mean, the catch radius is massive. So I don't know what, Eli's time speed is from any of these combines or anything like this. I don't really care. He's a explosive short area quickness guy that definitely looks the part. And both of those guys should be, home runs here in a couple years, right?
So let's move on to a linebacker. And This is Joshua Burnham. We're going to be talking about Traverse City Central in Michigan. Quite never have seen a highlight tape like Burnham's, where it's 31 minutes long, Mike. Typically highlight tapes are about 5 minutes. But hey, he's doing a lot for his high school up there. He's playing quarterback. The first play of his highlight tape is him catching an 18-yard touchdown. We'll watch here in a second for YouTube folks. I believe he played running back as a sophomore. If Holden's just a big athlete out there, I mean, Burnham, he's kind of in the same mold, Mike. So why don't you tell us about Joshua Burnham? What do you think about him?
I watched this. I'm not going to say I watched the entire tape twice because it is 31 minutes long. But he's a curious one because it's like he's a damn good quarterback. And then you're trying to evaluate him as a linebacker, right? Because that's where he's projected to play. But then I'm kind of wrestling with myself because he is playing two marquee positions for his high school. He's playing middle linebacker.
Well, Mike, he also comes off the edge a ton, right?
Yeah. Most of the clips that I saw, he was lined up as an inside backer. I mean, am I right with that, Mike?
No, well, right now we're just seeing him at quarterback. But I've talked to his coach.
He's listed as an outside linebacker.
Yeah, but right? He could play D end. Like people I've talked to, like that's kind of his secondary position, or H back. He can do a lot of things. So curious is a good word to describe Burnham.
So there we go. I was trying to make an argument here in terms of his, obviously the flexibility, the multiplicity, again, it's just right back into all of these recruits, or shoot, half of these recruits we talk about might could play 2, if not 3 positions. And here's the next latest iteration. So it's tough to evaluate him as a linebacker, again, because this is me putting words in Josh's mouth, but I would presume that quarterback's probably his primary focus, obviously during the game. And then one can assume that during a week of practice, he's spending most of his time on the offensive side of the ball in terms of his prep, right? So that leads you to believe he's just playing off of instincts as a defender. But again, height, weight, length, football smarts. He's playing This could be the type of kid where, yeah, he's like maybe a rover type because you figure he understands the way a passing offense works in terms of how to read routes on the fly. So this will be really interesting to see what he develops into because he's a quarterback, H back, inside linebacker, outside linebacker. Now you're telling me he might play defensive end. So, uh, and then we got a 31-minute highlight tape on top of that. So I'm glad we've got him. It seems to me, Mike, that thus far he might be the highest ranked commit.
He's up there. He's up there.
He's up there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Tyson Ford is the highest deal.
That you're right. I take that back. So just fast kid, long kid. Again, I'm assuming he's got a high IQ, high football IQ. As far as a linebacker is concerned, he didn't strike me as being an overly physical dude, but he does. He's a really good tackler. And admittedly, Mike, I wasn't even the most physical linebacker, like banger, big hitter, had bad shoulders, but I was a good tackler. And that's really what I see here from this kid.
Yeah, it does seem like now he's at quarterback again, but it did seem like for a couple plays there we saw him at linebacker. So when you're watching tape of linebackers and specifically even Burnham here, as I had you evaluate him, what are you looking for? Like, what is it in watching a linebacker film that is important as a former linebacker?
Burst, and bendability. So as you're watching on that film, can he get from hash to hash or from the numbers to the hash when he's trying to close, and then drop their weight? Like, and I hate to keep referencing Collie, but like Prince Collie, it's so obvious when you watch his film that he's just an animal, and genetically he's been really truly gifted, and he's just got that explosiveness, and that's in terms of a linebacker, really defensive players in general, Mike, you're looking for closing ability / burst and kind of that bendability, ability to drop their weight. So it used to be, I think, like old school football, you'd kind of look for more of a ability to start, stop as a linebacker, which is probably a close cousin to burst. But nowadays the game's played at such a high level and at such speed and velocity. It's crazy how good high school football players have become. It's absurd how good these kids are. Frankly, like even your average D2 kid is exceptional anymore. Like it's truly amazing the progression the kids have made in the last 20 years since I started paying attention. But yeah, now you're just looking for closing speed so much more so than you are like the start and stop. The footwork, all that stuff, instincts, ability to read things can be taught, but the willingness to close on a ball and come downhill with bad intentions, that's something you really can't. So he's a natural tackler, but you can't see the burst. Like when he's running some of that RPO, some of that inside option stuff, you can see the burst. But I don't want to be overly critical of him or critical at all, Mike, because again, it's
Just
not
don't
like
know.
he's playing receiver. It's not like he's playing receiver where he can take a play off here or there. Like he's playing quarterback and he's playing linebacker. Like there's no time to come up for air. So once this kid gets a chance to focus on a specific position, that'll be exciting to see.
So Burnham ranked as a 4-star recruit. So is Nolan Ziegler. And I think Notre Dame's going to sign 2 other 4-star linebackers in this class, or I think they're going to get a total of 4. You were a 5-star linebacker per Tom Lemming back in you were in 2000 class?
Correct.
What would you rank yourself if you were coming out right now and you were that same player? What would Mike Goolsby be ranked, considering how much different the game is now?
Dude, I was sick. And I've gone back. So I went back for, I went back to my hometown for a 20-year reunion for my high school state championship team. So I hadn't seen a lot of these guys in forever. And I saw my high school coach, Coach Dan Sharp. And I'm actually going into our Hall of Fame in September. So I have to go back for that. But I asked Coach Sharp, because back in the day, Mike, God, it might have even been like, ostensibly it was pre-internet. You know, you're talking 1999, 2000, like dial up or whatever. I
AOL,
don't,
AOL, yeah.
pretty much. So back then you would still be sending out, you'd send out a game film. There wasn't highlights. There was no editing software, none of that stuff. So you would send out a complete game. And I had like 26 tackles against Marmion Military Academy and a block punt. And then I had a game against Fenwick. So those are the two games that I sent out. And I was like, Coach, I've never seen, I'm talking to him on the side, I've never seen those games in 20 years. And he mailed me the VHS and I had them converted to digital.
What
So
are we
I've since
doing?
watched them.
Why are we breaking down your film?
Dude, all I could say is I get it. Like, I was like, because you never know, like, were you that good or whatever? And it's like, I was bigger and I was faster and I dropped my weight and I closed on the ball like crazy. So you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. I was 6'3", 225. And you see like a lot of these traits from some of these kids, but they're 205, whereas I was carrying an extra. I reported to Notre Dame at 236 as a 17-year-old, you know. So yeah, I probably would have been, I would have been a 4 or 5 star guy. I was a number 2 ranked linebacker in the country coming out.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's what you look for is like the kind of that bounce, kind of that burst, kind of that close, and then a motor, gets to the ball all the time. To me, that's what's most important.
So next recruit we're going to pop up on the screen is Darren Agu. He
Love this
is,
kid.
yeah. So he is been living in the United States for less than a year. He was born in Ireland, lived most of his life in England, and then moved to the United States in August of 2020, up in northeast Georgia. So, when's the last time Notre Dame had a Ireland-born player on its football team? When Agu was about to commit, I remember calling the late great Lou Samoji and asking him, and Lou had no idea. Like, Lou couldn't even tell you. So this kid is literally Irish.
When this kid committed, whatever it was, a month or so ago, I watched your commit breakdown of him, and actually a friend of mine, football buddy from Notre Dame, sent it to me, and I was like, this kid's an NFL kid. And then you kind of learn the backstory, Mike, in terms of where he's at in terms of his development, and just really in terms of the amount of time that he's had to work on his craft and be around like American football. So what you're seeing here is exceptional. And, I train defensive ends. And so you're seeing a kid that's only played 8-9 months of like real football and he knows how to use his hands. Okay. So put that into one bucket and you put the length, his measurables, like the wingspan, all that into a separate bucket. And then you see the burst. This kid's a really, really exciting prospect, really exciting prospect. And he's got anybody that has any question marks about him. He's got that offer from Nick Saban in Alabama. It should tell you all you need to know. But yeah, this kid's like an NFL type kid. And I wanted to kind of compare him to Jason Anye, who it's in terms of like they're super raw. They haven't played a ton of football, haven't been exposed to like high level ball. I didn't grow up playing Pop Warner in Texas or anything like that. But they're different body types. Like Jason Anye might be like that classic first guy off the bus, just looks like a physical specimen, and he's got to learn how to put it all together. Whereas this kid's not going to be as physically imposing right now, but like he looks like a Jason Taylor, Hall of Famer of Miami Dolphins. Like Jason Taylor played his whole career at 6'6", 230. Looks like a GQ model. And just, not like a violent type. He's not going to not an intimidating guy per se. He looks like I said, he looks like a male model, but the dude's, going to wind up in the Hall of Fame if he's not already. So that's the potential to me, like what you see with a kid like this. He's doing you saw that little workout and he doesn't even really know what he's doing yet. Very, very, very high ceiling here. And I'm excited to see what his senior year shapes up to be.
Yeah, the Jason Taylor comparison, obviously it's like a projection, right? Just give people an idea. But I'm a diehard Dolphins fan, so That was near and dear to my heart. I love that.
You can
So,
see it though, right? I mean, you really
sure.
can.
Jason Taylor was incredible. I mean, he was a defensive player of the year, I think, multiple times. You mentioned the Anye comparison. Obviously, totally different body types, like you mentioned. But both of them are so raw, and Mike Elson's done such a great job of getting just these raw guys, bringing them in and developing them. Is there something, and this is something I say, and I'm curious to get your take on this, if this is a real thing, that since Anye is so new to the game, he doesn't really have bad habits. Like he hasn't had some knucklehead coach when he was a middle schooler to tell him to do things one way and it was not a good thing, and then he developed some bad habits off of that. So is that a real thing, or is that really not a big deal when it comes to football, that like you have these bad habits in a coach can, college coach can, flip it pretty quickly?
Yeah, I think you could. It's interesting. Let me think, like kind of chew on that for a second, Mike. Defensively speaking, the biggest bad habit or the worst bad habit you could have is being lazy. Like you don't run to the ball. So if that's been allowed to take place through somebody's early days of their career, that's going to be a hard habit to break. So just start with that. I have seen, I've got a kid here in town who's got a couple like lower level D1 offers, defensive end, and it's like bad habit versus like muscle memory. So he has one move that he goes to, and it's just like his instinctual move. Like he throws it all the time. So you're having to break him from that one move and kind of expand from that in terms of his pass rush like acumen repertoire. So yeah, I think there's some validity to it, but like when you break it down to a basic level, Mike, the kids have to know like what they're even doing. There's a lot that goes into any given snap on a football in terms of like recognizing the down and distance, recognizing the formation, etc. Like where some of these kids, if you can start to get some of these still developing raw kids to mull over a couple of these things before the ball gets snapped, train their eyes, focus their eyes. That's where you start to see plays being made where they're not just leaning on their God-given ability. So I think that's a fair answer.
Sure, sure. Wanted to finish on talking about Steve Angeli. The other two commitments we should be talking about are Amorion Walker and Jaden Mickey, if we're going by who's the most recent commitments. But I was like, we haven't had Mike on for a while, so I wanted to get his thoughts on Steve Angeli, the four-star quarterback from New Jersey. These first clips I will show, because I always like to show some stuff that people haven't seen, which isn't just his huddle tape, is this workout practice footage from last September. It was right before the start of his shortened junior season in New Jersey. So, watching him here, watching him on tape, which we will pop on his tape here in a minute. Just what do you see from Steve Angeli? Like, what do you think about him, especially when you take into context, some of Notre Dame's other quarterbacks here recently?
So here's my notes. I put escapability. I said he's a quarterback, right? So he's not necessarily even I wouldn't like categorically refer to him as a dual threat. Mike, he's a quarterback first. He's a willing athlete. He does have some escapability. He's a sufficient athlete.
Yeah.
I've says makes a ton of throws from a dirty pocket, which is absolutely true. Makes a ton of crossbody throws, which is kind of a no-no, but there's often times where he's forced out to his left, like the clip you just seen there. Forced out to his left, and he's able to flip his hips around. That's an interesting thing. I put here hip snap. It's a new age way of delivering the ball. And then I put thoracic flexibility, Mike. Thoracic flexibility. So I'm watching.
That Notre Dame degree. I don't know what that means.
So I'm watching, I forget what it was, some sort of quarterback breakdown, something probably from leading into the NFL draft. Yes, it was a breakdown. It was Trent Dilfer, who people have mixed feelings about Trent Dilfer, but it's Trent Dilfer breaking down Trevor Lawrence's throwing motion. And he was saying he has like limited thoracic flexibility. So what does he mean by that? And I'm not a quarterback guru, but I understand biomechanics. Like when you watch Steve throw a ball, it's almost, I'm sure we've got a lot of golfers that read and listen will view this. kind of that hip snap. So his left hip moves before the ball comes. And that's how they're teaching kids to throw a ball now. And the reason that they're doing that is the pockets are becoming more and more condensed. Pass rushers are getting better and better. And it basically condenses his body to be able to still throw a ball. So you can't step into a throw. You just snap that hip. And he does that really, really well. And he spins the ball well. Like, I'd love to shake his hand. Just watching him throw a ball, it seems like he's got massive paws. But I like him a lot. He's from Bergen Catholic, where another ex-teammate of mine, Matt Lavecchio, who's actually started for Notre Dame in, this is 2000, 2000, started as a true freshman coming out of Bergen. So they play good football out there, well coached, good kids. So, yeah, just a sneaky athlete, probably not the sexiest kid in the world. I wish he was 6'4". He's not. But just a really sturdy kid. And it's an interesting conversation, Mike, to get into like the quarterbacks that Brian Kelly seems to target or kind of look for. And nobody's ever told me this or anything even close to this. It's just my own kind of observations. I feel like the quarterbacks that he targets, the personality profile probably matters as much as the physical ability does. So in terms of like a lack of an ego, I don't know if Brian Kelly wants a 5-star kid like it's, one of these kids that come off of QB1 where he's got his own Netflix show. I don't think Brian Kelly wants that. I think he wants kids that have humility, kind of quiet leaders. Just kind of watching Angeli play, he strikes me as one of those types of guys. But yeah, he can absolutely throw the ball. He's accurate, and he seems like confident. When you watch, if we get to the game film, Mike, his actual cut-ups, he's throwing from some disgusting pockets, if you even want to call it a pocket, and he's calm. Like, you don't see a lot of anxiety. You'll see him get through his progressions, keeps his eyes downfield. He's a very calm player. We saw from Ian Book at times, he looked like as if he was a little bit uptight and had a little bit of play anxiety. He was just afraid to let that ball go. I don't know if that's going to be the case with this kid. Because there's a lot of, like, that play right there is, again, he's a sneaky athlete. But as you continue to watch this, he's got a nasty pocket that he's forced to throw out of, and he manages to keep his composure. So this will be interesting. I mean, I know I'm not the best QB analyst. Nobody thought Ian Book was going to get drafted, Mike, but
4th round.
This kid could play. This kid could play. Yeah, to me too, Mike. This is kind of fun. Me personally, I don't want, like, I love to talk about the NFL. Justin Fields ran a 4.41, right? Goes to the Bears. I don't want my quarterback running a 4.41. Personally, I want him to be athletic enough to pick up 6 yards if he needs to, kind of like Book would do at times, just sneak out when he has to. But I want my quarterback to be a quarterback first and an athlete second, and that's what you're getting here. Sorry, Mike, I cut you off.
No. Good stuff. I probably should have been taking notes because I have a lot of things I want to say. On the height, he was just at a Rivals camp, and he checked in at 74.5 inches. So he's 6'2.5". Okay. His dad is 6'7", and I've met his dad a couple of times. His dad's a big dude. So Steve's kind of still got a little baby face in him. So I think, he might have an extra little growth in there.
And it could just be the red shoes, Mike. Listen to us. How silly are we? It could just be the red Ronald McDonald shoes on this film.
Does he have red shoes? As I was watching,
I was like, but I'm like, this kid's got like size 16 feet. Like, his feet look massive
there's the red.
On film.
There's the red, yeah. I love this throw right here, by the way. I love that.
That's a hard throw to make.
They had to move that pocket out all year. So
yeah.
Another thing, there's a kid every year, that I just always kind of latch on, and I'm like, I'm just biased. Like, I just really like the kid and the family. Last year's at tight end Kane Barong. This year it's Angeli. I just love Steve Angeli. I love his film. I love his family. I mean, look, this is what I say about this kid. I completely 100% agree with you on the I want my quarterback to, have some mobility, but not always turn to it or be run first. Like that's not what I want. I want a big quarterback. He's 6'2.5" already, 210 pounds. Everyone loves Tyler Buckner. Buckner is 6'1", 197. So he's already bigger than Tyler Buckner. Of course, he doesn't run like Tyler Buckner. No, not really many people do. But he's big. He's going to be playing in a lot of cold weather. That's a Colin Cowherd thing. I gotta lie. I can't lie. Like, Cowherd loves his big quarterbacks in the weather and in cold weather. I do too. I love his mechanics, how well he throws on the run. He's got some really sneaky, good athleticism. A very good basketball player who actually grew up playing basketball. Multi-sport guy. Here's my one concern. I've literally told this to Steve face to face is my one concern is when you watch him running for his life, does he start, and if it happens again this year, so then it's 2 years back to back of him running for his life all the time, does he start, if he gets to Notre Dame, does he start bailing out of the pocket too early, have happy feet like we saw with Ian Book? Would that be a concern for you at all, Mike, if he starts to get in a habit of not trusting his offensive line? Because we saw Book do that during his career.
No. It's a valid concern, and it's pretty astute of you. And that's, you talked about bad habits with Agu and
Yep.
Anye, right? Like, so that they're kind of raw, whatever. But and I know how intently these coaches watch whether it's Notre Dame or whether it's Ohio State, like when they're breaking down a recruit's film, they watch it over and over and over again. So this is probably the third time I'm seeing Angeli's film. For as many times as he needs to just vacate and try and do what he can with his feet, again, the eyes stay downfield. And there's a couple times you'll see Mike, he takes shots. Like he's letting that ball go and he's getting crushed right as the ball's going. And that's the stuff that you love to see. So if anything, I think honestly, Mike, could probably be the converse of what you're suggesting, that he's going to have happy feet and he's going to want to take off. If this is what he's been, the sandbox he's been playing with playing in the last 2-3 years, if he can get these Notre Dame offensive lines, which traditionally in the very recent history have been tremendous,
Sure.
He might be more comfortable than ever. And then he could just, because there's a difference between being, an athlete back there playing quarterback that has like, just gonna Cam Newton, Lamar Jackson, you name it, just take off and run. And then there's escapability where he can slide within the pocket. And that's what you rather see. So he does a lot of that.
Yeah.
The more film you watch I know he's not the highest ranked guy and he's not a 5-star type kid that everybody frankly lusts after, as Notre Dame fans do. But the more and more you watch his tape, Mike, and I agree with you, I'm a fan of his. Buckner's so fun to watch because he's so electric, and gosh dang, man, he looks like a running back when he carries the ball, and he made so many like just absurd throws.
Yeah.
We're just like, but I had a coach, ironically, Mike, Kent Bear, my old defensive coordinator. I talked to him on the phone yesterday. He's a defensive coordinator at Montana. But Coach Bear told me, he said, consistency is the truest measure of performance. And I've repeated that dozens of times over the course of my life. So, like, this kid's a consistent quarterback, throws the ball from the pocket consistently. Whereas Buckner's crazy exciting to watch and super fun. But there's a lot of money on the line. College football is a big business, and you've got to develop a coach's trust, where a kid that plays the quarterback position like Angeli does, mark my words, I mean, that's really going to earn a coach's trust and keep a coach's trust quicker than some of these wow plays from Buckner, right? So Buckner's going to have to get to the point where he gets consistent and earns trust. But hopefully that makes sense, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. My quick closing thoughts on Angeli. Sure. This is his first year starting. That Catholic ball in New Jersey. I think there's a lot of politics why he didn't start as a sophomore. He had offers from Ohio State and Penn State and was the backup quarterback. stuck it out there, didn't transfer. A lot of kids transfer. Angeli didn't transfer, waited his turn, and he started 6 games in his high school career, his junior season. They only had 6
Yeah.
games. So his best football is ahead of him. The other thing is, you mentioned Kelly kind of in the traits in a quarterback. As I'm kind of thinking about it, man, he's had some quarterbacks with some, part of my language, shit to them. Book had some shit to him. Kaiser, some of these guys. Maybe not Kaiser, but the Zaire kid.
No,
Angeli.
Reese. I mean, Reese had a lot of moxie as a player. He had a lot of
Angeli
moxie.
is the kind of your traditional like quarterback face. Russell Wilson, Tom Brady says a lot without saying a ton, kind of thing. But like very good leadership skills, great recruiter, helping out Reese on the trail. Like, he's to me, he's Drew Pine, and I've said this, he's Drew Pine, but a couple inches taller, 3 inches taller. Like Drew, I loved everything about Drew Pine's leadership, his mechanics, how he plays the game, but Drew's 5'11 and a half. To me, Steve Angeli is Drew Pine, but 3 inches taller.
Okay. Well, yeah, you're talking about he had to sit as a kid that's got some Division I offers, and he's sitting. Yeah, that's character. And I'm just telling you, like, I watch this kid hang in the pocket and get smoked as he's delivering a ball, and just the poise that he seems to play with. Yeah, those are things that you need, not even that you look for, Mike, but that you need at the quarterback position. So I'm glad we have him.
Yeah. Well, Mike, this was fun. We'll have to do this again soon. Talk some more Notre Dame Cruton.
That's what we do, dude.
All right. Well, appreciate you guys tuning in, watching, listening, wherever you are, however you're listening, making us a part of your day. We appreciate you. I'm Mike Singer. He's Mike Goolsby. You guys have a great rest of your day.